4020.
If only I'd been recording it then, because we could use that on the.
Do you want me to say it again? And we'll
Yeah, say it
pretend
again. Yeah, we'll pretend this isn't recorded, and of course, as you know, and everyone listening knows, this will be in the podcast. Do the line. Do the line.
The chaos is part of the charm.
Molly Fairhurst is here. How do we describe you, Molly? I was going to describe you as an up-and-coming journalist, but that sounded really patronising.
No, I would say that I am an up-and-coming journalist. That's the best way I can describe myself because I'm still not quite a journalist.
Well, I mean,
I don't know. She's had a piece published in 4020 magazine.
Well, yes. There is that.
You've got a YouTube channel. Have you done more than one video yet? Or is you still
No,
one?
So what's happened is, right, my phone broke, which is what I was using to record. And I still haven't replaced it. So I've got this terrible, it's literally just an iPod Touch. Until I can get a new phone. But once I've got a new phone, the uploads will be coming thick and fast.
Because you did
I do have a blog. I do have a blog as well. So at the moment I'm just yapping away on there because I can do that with my laptop.
Which is fair enough.
I can't believe in a week that Wakefield are playing Leeds in the Challenge Cup, I've got to be on with 2 Wakefield fans.
I'm not even there. I'm not even there on Friday.
Oh, I've got my ticket. Can't wait.
You did your sole video at the moment is that you've ranked the championship teams in order.
Yeah.
I mean, Phil's already done this for the magazine, so but Halifax are back. They were away and now they're back. How do you see the championship finishing now? Or well, apart from London obviously finishing top and Featherstone not existing.
Well, I've got really mixed feelings about the fact that Halifax have come back and then immediately played London. I don't know. I kind of felt like it was a little bit unfair almost because you sort of knew the scoreboard before they even kicked off. The fact that they got the points that they did was something. To be honest, I think not a lot of what I said was far off the truth. I think obviously, I mean, maybe I'm just biased, but I think like maybe with people like Newcastle proving themselves a little bit more, but Halifax, I'm delighted that there's still a team there, and they've not just fallen to the wayside. Or someone at one point was talking about merging them with Huddersfield, which I'm so glad hasn't gone through.
I think the interesting thing is that because everybody doesn't play everyone this year, you can't really run a form line through the championship. I think having a top 10 playoff is probably the best you can get. I mean, even Halifax are not now ruled out of making the playoffs. But I spoke to somebody who was at the game on yesterday at the Shea, and they said that actually Halifax had a couple of tries disallowed. The score was a little bit not reflective of the Halifax performance. The fact that they were credible for a long part of the game says a lot about Kyle Eastman. And again, I think it's really important that he's still with them, but also that the 14 players that stuck by there really wanted to play for them. And I don't blame anybody that left. They didn't know what was going to happen, but I think there's a real feel that they can get back on the horse quite quickly. So that's good. The worry is the more you talk to people who are involved in the championship, that there are a couple of other clubs teetering at the moment, and it really is, something needs to happen to bolster the championship that is nothing to do with a potential broadcasting deal, which isn't going to happen. It's nothing to do with anything other than you can't fault a lot of the owners that are putting their money in at that level because there genuinely is no return. But what do we want that second tier to be and to look like? And I'm really not sure anybody's addressing that at the moment.
No, yeah, I think definitely the championship, the whole combination, the merge thing, I don't really see the point if they're not going to play everyone, because you might as well at that point just have a League One or League Two. League One, League Two, Championship, League One. I just don't think that I feel like it's been neglected as a sort of whole thing, and they're just assuming that it'll work itself out. And you can't, you really feel for everyone whose club's going through the hardships. I mean, obviously, Fev is so close to me, and I've got so many friends who are Featherstone fans who are just absolutely devastated. And you don't know who could be next. It's so tenuous at the moment.
Thankfully, every team played on Sunday, which makes the results easier to read. Dewsbury 8, Barrow 20, Doncaster 32, Goal 16, Halifax 4, London 42. Team of the week, apparently, Halifax. North Wales 16, Batley 30, Rochdale 20, Sheffield Eagles 44, who do appear to have Now everything is with a new coat of paint, or whatever you want to call it. The Olympic Legacy Park seems to be working out well for them. Swinton 4, Newcastle 36, Whitehaven 20, Midlands 20, Widnes 32, Hunslet 26, and Workington 52, Salford 10. I hope Hunslet are going to use Tom Nicholson Watton a few times, because that's a lot of money to put on the back of a shirt, Phil, if you're only going to get him once a season.
I think this is the other issue about what's happening in the tier below Super League. And I get that the priority has got to be to get more money into the sport. And you're only going to do that by looking at the elite level. And you've got to have a mechanism whereby some of that money trickles down in, and I know it's a terrible phrase, economically trickle down, but you've got to have some ring fencing of funding that looks after the championship. But I think, the fact that the dual register system has gone, the fact that the reserves don't play every week, and I'm not even sure what standard we can talk about reserve grade rugby. What do you do if you're a fortunate enough Super League team to have a relatively large squad that isn't injured at the moment? The three guys that went from Leeds to Hunslet are very much thought to be first team products. Presley Cassell's one of their best prospects. Ben Littlewood had Las Vegas 1 week, Hunslet the next, and Tom Nicholson Watton again. I think is pretty well thought of at Headingley that he's going to have some part to play this season and going forward. But what do you do with your players? And then, of course, does that disrupt the championship? I don't know. I assume Hunslet welcomed them. It was apparently a very, again, creditable display at Widnes. I think Hunslet had a try disallowed that nobody could quite understand why, when they were ahead and they only lost by a score. But what does that do to the championship? I'm not sure. Again, any of this helps that competition forward. Taking the 1895 Cup away from Wembley, I'm not sure that helps those championship clubs go forward. Not knowing how the 1895 Cup is going to end, because it's scheduled to be played at the same weekend as the last round of regular season championship fixtures. So what does that mean for the two teams that are going to be in it? All of that seems to be a bit ad hoc. I sort of understand why, because the priorities are huge in terms of, obviously, the big story at the moment is this potential NRL Super League link and what that might lead to, and who might administer it, and how might it be, brought to the table whereby the owners of the Super League clubs will find it acceptable. I get that all of that has to be the priority, and the championship is firefighting. It's which club is going to be next, in front of the RFL that will need some kind of help. And say, I know of two that are very, very close. So it might be a season of just avoiding disaster wherever you can, but there doesn't seem to be a plan for championship clubs.
I mean, you might have just ended the sentence there at plan. Did the Queensland Cup want to buy the championship, or the New South Wales Cup? Was it Whitehaven or Workington last week with a statement about the number of fans through the turnstile? I can't remember. Whitehaven, because because Wakefield fans love Whitehaven. I forgot about that. Apart from gerrymandering people into stadia, which I don't think we're allowed to do just yet, how do we get more people involved in watching rugby league, Molly? There you go. There's a big question for you. There's an easy one. We'll just shut up for 15 minutes now.
I mean, I think some of it comes getting people to championship clubs is very hard to do if you're not a rugby league fan. And I mean, I went to uni in the Midlands. All my friends are not rugby league people, and I have converted them through sheer force. But shy of doing that to hundreds of thousands of people, what do you do? And I think some of that comes down to the way that Super League looks on the TV, because if you are a casual sports fan and you're flicking through, what does it look like when you flick and nothing's happening on the pitch because the referee's having to go change the mics again, or the play stops for 10 minutes while we watch the same 5 frames over and over in slow motion because of video refs? I think the visual and the media appeal starts at the top and trickles its way down. Sorry, Phil, I know you don't like that word, but it does trickle its way down, and it can't be. It can't. It has to go from the top. And at the moment, it doesn't look good.
I think I think you touched on something there that's even more fundamental, and that is that these clubs are the residue of traditional rugby league. However you want to define that, they are very important in their communities. but they have a very limited fan base in terms of expanding it. And I keep listening to, the chairman of Oldham and the good people at Whitehaven and any other number of clubs saying we need more of you to come through the gates. But where are these fans going to come from? Because nowadays, neutral fans or occasional fans or even lapsed fans are going to go to look at event sport. We see it in all forms. The things that have been fantastic so far at the beginning of this season have been the events. York on the opening day of the Super League season was an event. Obviously, clearly the World Club Challenge, brilliant sellout, fantastic atmosphere, was an event. Vegas wasn't about the teams that played there. Although I would quite like to go back and talk about the game because we did miss it last week. But it was an event. And again, not only was it an event, but those people who are negotiating with the NRL, there's value to what Super League brought to that. We've got Magic Weekend coming up. It's already sold record number of tickets because it's an event. So all of that, I think, how do you then go back to a community that is deep rooted in rugby league, but has lost the ability to be at that elite level and say more people need to come, and it's the responsibility of the people. I think 1,400 to watch Oldham play in the Championship. How many do you think are going to turn up and watch you? Yes, get in the schools and yes, get around the community clubs. But you ask a young kid in Oldham if they want to go and see a game this weekend, they're going to go and watch Wigan. They're going to go and watch St Helens. They're going to go and watch, Warrington. And I think you do have to cut your cloth according to your means, but we need to make it worthwhile for these clubs because they have a vital thing. They just have a vital function in their community, but they can't expect to suddenly go from 1,400 fans to 3,500 fans, which might make them commercially successful. So I think we need to look at that as a game. What do we want from them? How do they survive? How do we, dare we say, and we've said it before on this, link them up with the full-time club so that full-time and part-time both get something out of that relationship? And maybe that's where we're going wrong at the moment. And it isn't an appeal just to get more people. And it's how do we make them valuable in their own right at whatever level they are at, whilst also trying initiatives that more people will try and watch the sport in their area. But don't blackmail the fans that it's all about them, because they're doing well. They're doing the best they can already do by supporting a club. And if they're not going to suddenly all bring a friend. That's not the way out of the morass that they're in at the moment.
I don't know how it works in other sport. I don't know how Rugby Union works. Their second tier, where obviously they're now pulling up the drawbridge in an exciting move to protect the clubs in the top flight, which we're not going to call the Prem because it's. I love the fact that journalists have to call it that, and there is all these credible writers using the phrase Prem and Champ, even though they sound terrible. But I don't know how it works with a Doncaster. Do they have a link up with? Well, I don't know who exists in the world of professional rugby union. I know in ice hockey there are links, and probably in other sports as well. But we don't want to, but we might have to do feeder clubs in a sense. And Joel Rich was that anyway, because how many times did Featherstone have their team propped up by Leeds Rhinos players for years and coaches?
I think the other thing about all of that is it's Rugby Union have got buy-in from their second tier to pull up the drawbridge, partly because any team coming into the top tier has got to have played in the Championship. So they're saying, right, well, if you're good enough to not be in our division, at least you'll have been in our division. So I think we need to look at slightly what they've done. The one thing I would say they've done is they've branded each differently. They've got their own identity. Being a champ club, whoever they are, and I don't claim to know anything about domestic rugby union, it has an identity. Our Championship doesn't have enough of an identity at the moment, and I think that's something we should look at. But we also need to give them a grand final. So even if it's London walking through the division and they're going to eventually be in Super League, and they're doing what Wakefield did when they were in, or what Hull KR did, or what Toronto did. Don't have the grand final at the home of the team that's at the top of the league, particularly if that team is such a dominant team. Make it an event. It goes back to what we were talking about before, that if you know that Wakefield is going to stage the grand final for the Championship teams And we all know at the beginning of the season, the aim is to get to the DIY Kitchen Stadium. Neutral fans might go to that. But I think if you're going to say, oh, well, London are going to host the grand final and London have won every game and they've won it by a margin of 50 or 60 points, what interest is there in that? And it's the same with the 1895 Cup. Make it a valuable commodity. And I still think we should play at Wembley. But if Wembley's not affordable at the moment, let's pick a venue now that is in some way prestigious for those clubs or adds value to the game. And then if you do that and you do it far enough in advance, neutral fans will go.
What would you do with the 1895, Molly?
I mean, I don't. I think it should be a Wakefield. I don't think it really should be. I think it deserves a spectacle. It's the identity, like Phil was saying, the identity of the championship needs grounding and it needs reassuring. And when you take out all the sort of the spectacle and the event of what is a really big event for that league. I remember when Wakefield won and went to Wembley, it was fantastic. Not just for the fans who obviously really needed it, but also for the players and the club to get to have their moment in the sun, as it were, at Wembley is huge. And I think it should be a spectacle, even if we're not going to hold it at Wembley, but somewhere that's going to attract not just the fans of, like, let's be honest, London, but fans who enjoy the sport are neutral and would want to go.
Well, which cat is that one, Phil? I keep forgetting the names.
Well, I shut the door because I knew this would happen. And they ganged up on it and have just pushed it open. So Oreo has now decided he wants to be on it. And
what does Oreo think of the 1895 Cup and Huns? Is he a Rhino supporter? Is he forced into being Rhino supporter?
No, Oreo thinks the 1895 Cup should stay at Wembley, and Honey thinks that the Championship Grand Final should be at Headingley.
Well, why not at Headingley? It's a fine venue. I was trying to remember what I was watching the other day, and there was video footage. In fact, I've written it in my column, so I'm not going to spoil it now, just in case it's not been cut out. And I can't remember. I didn't see your whole chaos documented. Now I've got confused.
It's in there.
It's in there, right? Well, I won't spoil that joke then. Well, reference, and won't necessarily say a joke. Has there been any other news this week? Apart from the NRL and binders.
Well, possibly. The big news is the negotiation with the NRL and where that's at and who you believe and what side of the coin that we're on. And I think it's fascinating because clearly Peter V'landys' interviews in Las Vegas gave the indication that things were starting to move. They brought forward their TV negotiation by almost a year because they feel that their iron is so hot at the moment. And that now aligns them with sort of our broadcast renegotiations, which means that there's now an incentive for both parties to get something done probably quicker than we thought it was going to be. And again, depending on who you believe, there is discussion about what sort of offer it should be and how it should be administered and governed. And there's another school of thought that says that offer's already on the table. And we're not a million miles away of getting some agreement. So I think the truth lies nearer there is an amount of money that has already been offered by the NRL, and it's pretty significant enough for the ears of those who might have opposed it to be sufficiently pricked up to say, yes, we need to sort out how that is going to be administered and who is going to take charge of it. But it's a significant enough amount that we're not going to be able to turn that down. And I think what Vegas has done, and clearly what the World Club Challenge has done, is allowed this side of the negotiation to put a value on that. So I think things are happening quicker and are more advanced than perhaps maybe the RFL negotiators would want us to think. And I've seen some headlines today saying that they're in control of the negotiations. I think the negotiations are clearly being driven by the investor. Our competition is at a low enough ebb through no fault of anybody who's playing the game. And you said the first month of the season has been really, really good. But I think the systemic issues of economics over here mean that clearly we are available to be bought into. There's still the talk from the RFL that we're chatting to other potential investors. They're not going to bring a level of expertise and understanding that the NRL will. So I think, we need to park any other investment, because any other investment will be capital that needs repaying. the big thing about what Peter V'landys was saying was we do actually see this as a loss leader. So like, yeah, let's get that moving up. I think that's going to happen soonish. We're going to get some more details of what that is, but I think there's a relatively significant amount of money in the pot. It's the decision of who looks after it and how it gets distributed.
And not squandered on players from the Queensland Cup and not on ground improvements like in 1996.
And not going straight to the clubs to spend on salary cap. I think it's more about pathways, systems, marketing, television negotiations. I think there's going to be more implications around what does that mean. And one of the first things I would imagine it means is we have to change the amount of rounds in our competition so that the two line up together, and that they start on the same weekend, and that we have a grand final finish. So we've said it before, it's all about events, isn't it? Well, the whole thing needs to finish with a grand final weekend. And it was almost by accident this year that we played on a Saturday night, they played on a Sunday afternoon, but it became grand final weekend. And I think that needs, again, putting into some kind of a format where everybody gets more out of it than they're currently getting. There's a good debate to be had about the World Club Challenge. If we have simultaneous grand finals, could you play that the week after? And then you're talking about, for example, if it was Hull KR fans and they're celebrating winning the grand final, if we know, let's say the World Club Challenge becomes a vehicle for spreading the sport globally, which is what the NRL are wanting in their broadcast negotiations. Do we say and tell everybody now that the World Club Challenge is in Hong Kong and it's a week after the grand final, and the team that won the grand final will be virtually that team will play the following week, and the celebrations will run over into playing in a World Club Challenge. They'll be playing the personnel who played in the Australian World Club Challenge. It's not, yes, the team that played, but not quite everybody, because some have moved on, or you can see where these synergies might work, and those, I think, are the debates that we might be having. We certainly should be having about how this relationship can be more meaningful.
Well, we used to have the Championship final or the Premiership final not too long after the Challenge Cup final, so I know it's a slightly different kettle of fish in terms of getting to Hong Kong or wherever, but that kind of similar concept has been done before. What do you think the NRL can do to help Super League and Rugby League in this country in general?
I think so I work in PR at the moment, and one of the things that is my huge life is beyond just the spectacle of the event, because anyone can turn and watch the event, but then once it's done, a casual fan just switches off, ignores whatever, it's gone. Whereas if you can really get that marketing and you can build almost like a second space or a safe space for fans, your engagement keeps happening and it keeps coming back. And I think Super League is trying that. Obviously, stuff like Fantasy Super League, and they're trying to push a little bit more for more community fan spaces. But I think it's that action of turning you from a casual viewer to someone actually engaging on, almost creating your own content around the sport. And I think the NRL will really try and bring that. I just think that obviously getting us things like getting Super League on the TV and not having to click a red button or click through, or having to watch a YouTube live stream and relying on the clubs would be massively beneficial. I think aesthetically, if a stream comes up and it looks good, or it's on Sky or whatever broadcaster it's on, and it's got a working clock and all the graphics are there.
Oh, come on. You're in the moon on the stick. Come on.
I'm sorry. I just think the aesthetics is a huge part of it, and I think just getting the basics right will make such a big difference.
And as someone said to me the other day, at half time on these games on the red button, get rid of that graphic so we can see whatever's going on the pitch, because there's kids playing out there, there's whatever. It'd be more interesting to see that from a wide shot than the graphics, which we get for about 10 minutes.
I think we need to make a joke about RFL timekeeping. Yeah. I don't know if we're recording.
Again, we are recording, so again, we'll just start with this bit as the second half of the programme. And James Child has turned up.
Hello, how are we?
Were you running the stop clock on Saturday night? Were you at the Brewdog Stadium? Was that you?
I get blamed for a lot, but to say I wasn't even involved and then get the blame is saying something. No, I wasn't involved. And actually, look, I don't know the ins and outs of that one, but it's probably a little bit more complicated these days with keeping the time than it actually appears, particularly with the captain's challenge and live referrals and all this kind of thing. People obviously think it's easy. It's actually probably not.
Is
That's
it
not an
10,
excuse, by the way.
is it 10 minutes of real time or 10 minutes of game time?
Game
Just as
time, game
game time.
time.
That's all
Yeah.
people need to know, and then we can work out what happens from there.
But you know, when I used to be involved in a Sky game on the sidelines, I'd be looking at basically at the screen on the big clock, using the official timekeeper clock in the ground, and working off that because everybody can see it, and then you just say, well, it'll go back on at that time. But I don't know the ins and outs of what's going on here, but it's not great.
I'll be on the pile of things for the RFL to investigate. Like, are the tickets still on? Have we've done the England thing now, haven't we? We've done that. We've done England.
Don't talk about tickets.
Why? What's happened with tickets? There's something else happened with tickets. I don't know about. Kevin Sinfield for England anyway, because he'll probably need a new job soon. So,
Where did that come from?
well, because I mentioned England and the World Cup's coming up. But, yeah. So we're just talking about the NRL, James. Are you excited for our new overlords from Australia to take over? They might give you some money for the referees department, even though you're a consultant or whatever you are.
Yeah. Is it going to happen? That's the question, isn't it?
Phil's nodding.
Phil's nodding, so it must be happening. I think it needs to happen. As to whether all the clubs are on the same page, I think I was reading John Davison's article yesterday about it and saying that there's basically a lack of heads of terms, which is what somebody, if they want to make an offer to get involved, usually sort of present terms, don't they? And I think maybe it's the chicken and the egg who speaks first about what an agreement will look like. But it's getting the clubs to let go, isn't it?
I think the issue is going to be one of what are the NRL paying for? Because we were saying earlier on, I think there is a financial offer on the table. It's the details around that haven't been formalised yet, not least who controls where that money is spent and how that money is spent. And that probably is going to be the battleground on governance. I think there's a realistic feeling around the game at the moment that putting Nigel Wood in situ for another year is to see that transition through. But I think a lot of the clubs who were dissenters have had their minds slightly changed already by the amount of money that the NRL are talking about, and I think that's why things will move quite quickly.
Money talks.
It does at the moment here.
Yeah.
Is there any other news, Phil, in the last 2 weeks? Apart from you want to talk about Vegas. I know you want to talk about Vegas, but anything else before you say how great Leeds were?
I didn't want to talk about Vegas. I didn't want to miss the opportunity of analysing some of the games from last week because
58-0 or something ridiculous. Hilarious game.
Your tonsils took priority, but apparently there was a very good game in Vegas.
Mikasivo is the world's greatest winger. It's not Ryan Hall anymore. It's Mikasivo. Or Mikasivo.
Not even fit yet.
No. Did you enjoy the Vegas from? Well, did the Cats enjoy it mainly? That's the main thing.
Oh, they enjoyed us being up because obviously that meant they could cause more mischief. But I can't see a negative in it, having spoken to a lot of people that have been. And obviously, this is where I say the new issue of the magazine is out at the end of the week, and you'll be able to read a 2-page feature from Pete Smith, who observed it for us. It was a success on every level. It took people by surprise. And I think even some of the Hull KR fans who will have spent a lot of money to be there relished the occasion and the opportunity rather than the 80 minutes that you can't control. I don't know anybody, and you're better people than I am to ask whether you thought that the actual margin of the result was a surprise. But I think what the Americans and the Australians were saying was the actual margin of victory didn't matter. It just came over so well in the stadium and on the television that people got very excited about the atmosphere created. It was the sing off from both ends of the stadium. For television executives, that's what you want. And the fact that one team scored a lot more points than the other wasn't as detrimental as perhaps it could have been. Plus, for those that don't really fully understand the sport, most of the tries that were scored were pretty spectacular. Could I just say that most of the tries that were scored by Leeds?
Well, of the whole 3 games, yeah, yeah.
But I'm not saying anything else. I think it should be down to you to decide whether it was
Well,
a success or not.
I think, and I think you said it in a tweet beforehand, by the way, before you knew what the result was. So I'll say that the game itself, I think, is almost academic to the event and the wider thing. And listening to Peter Blandis talk about the proposal and the reason why Vegas exists, it's nothing really to do with the country it's in that, is this an idea to grow the sport in America? Well, if it's a byproduct, great, but that's not necessarily the main focus. I think the benefit to the NRL has been that it's generated more money by creating an event that creates puts eyeballs on the game, viewership on the game. That in turn increases revenue, and actually that's probably as much as what it's about than anything else. Which is why this idea of doing sort of like a global round extends that idea even further, doesn't it? I think that for me is it's a commercial asset. Talk about assets and games and things like that. It probably feels wrong, but that's what it is. That's the world that we're in. And Super League is they're having this conversation with the NRL at the moment. It all comes back to money as it always does. And so for me, I think when you look at people's photos on Facebook and things like that and social media, it just looks like a jamboree of rugby league, and it must be a great occasion to be there. Not so great when you lose 58-6 and you're on a long flight back home, but I'm sure that was they're comforted by the amazing result the week before against Brisbane. So I think rugby league's the winner, isn't it?
Rugby League's always the winner. What did you make of the whole thing, Molly?
I really enjoyed it. I thought, again, like James and Philip said, it looked fantastic. Like watching it on screen, the atmosphere just seemed amazing, and like everything I saw on social media, I was just like, wow. And a lot of things I saw from Australian fans and journalists, they were saying like, as much as the NRL like wants to get involved in Super League, like the NRL needs Super League, it needs the English fans because they brought it, and I think that is probably the best way to see it, at least from my sort of like set way of seeing things. And again, like it is a commercial asset because you put it on TV, you've got two crowds seeing their hearts out, you've got the whole fanfare, it looks fantastic, and people will look at that and think, I want to put my money in that. They won't do that if it looks terrible, but it didn't.
I think going back to
the
global round, that's really important because I think if you're serious about taking a group of games on the same weekend around the world, that's where the two competitions have to kick off at the same time, because your global round isn't just going to be, oh, it's all the NRL teams going and playing in Japan and Hong Kong and Miami, I think has been and London. You have to make each of those events ally with some Super League teams. Now, I know that we're always going back to the fans, and you're not going to get necessarily the same amount of fans going, but you have to have a Super League presence at all of these games. So if there's going to be a game in London and London are in Super League, they have to play in it. If there's going to be a game in Miami, that might be Hull KR playing Hull in it. Have a local derby. If it's going to be in Hong Kong, it might be St Helens and Wigan. But you're going to enhance whatever this global round is and however it looks. It's not just about the NRL playing their games. If there is going to be a general synergy between the two competitions, that's how it starts. And that's what broadcasters start to get excited about. That's what new territories want to pay in. I don't think we should miss the fact that State of Origin is going to New Zealand. It's the first time ever it's going out of Australia in 2027. But the Auckland local council are paying half of the cost of that because they know that the tourist money that will come in, and that's not just Queensland and New South Wales fans, that's a lot of people that aren't even involved in rugby league at the moment, but have a massive event on their doorstep. Rugby union fans in New Zealand, in Auckland, will go and watch State of Origin. So even if we're having a holiday and we were thinking of maybe going around that side of the world, we might time it with State of Origin being in Auckland, and you're ticking off two of your bucket lists. I think that's what whatever this arrangement looks like financially, that's what it looks like practically. And I think, again, our owners and our fans will have to realise that that's just the world we live in at the moment. And because you can't go to every game because you might not be able to afford it, because You know, you look at your season calendar and, oh, we're going to Vegas and we're going to Hong Kong and we're going to Auckland and we're going to Catalan and we're going to Toulouse, and I can't afford all of that. That's when you buy your subscription. And that ultimately is what gets you the money back that's invested in the sport.
Well, there's some exciting, well, I say exciting. It's either exciting or amusing, depending on how your brain works. News embargoed until tomorrow at 12. So if you're listening tomorrow on Tuesday, you'll see it come out. But it's kind of on those lines, Phil, isn't it? It's kind of global partnerships and stuff. And it amused me immensely when I saw it came out this afternoon. So look out for that one tomorrow. That's what I'm saying. It's that kind of thing that's happening more and more, which is interesting. Is that all the news? Now, we've done Vegas, we've done the NRL takeover, we've mentioned Halifax. Now, do we have to get into last week's games, what we're in week 4, week 5 of the season now?
Week 4 of Super League. I think the only game we needed to mention last week, we mentioned.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'd mentioned it enough, but apparently Leeds won really convincingly in Las Vegas.
I've got a league table here. It took me ages to put this together. And then I realised when I put it at the back of the shot, you can't actually see it. But Wigan are top of the table and Leeds are second and Huddersfield are bottom. So as well, £2 from the charity shop. We'll start on Thursday. But by the way, Melbourne Storm 52, Parramatta Eels 4. What's going on there? I thought all the games in the NRL were close, Phil.
Well,
is it all to do with Zach Lomax? Is it all to do with him?
No, we also had a 30-40.
Yeah, what's going on?
26-0. I mean, our games are far more competitive than they are. Even this weekend, where you could start to see there was some disparity. There's, apart from sort of Huddersfield and Hull KR, that's the biggest margin this weekend, and all our games seem to be pretty competitive. They had a couple of blowouts and a point a minute game in their first round, so we're clearly a better competition than they are.
Well, before we get into things, which game did you do this, James?
I did the Toulouse-Wigan game.
Oh, Toulouse-Wigan. We'll come to that in a bit then. Wakefield 14, Hull 10. Wakefield win another home game. That's exciting. And Darryl Powell looked very excited on the telly. And that was a strange game of rugby league. I don't know what to make of that one, other than I don't think Wakefield felt like they got away with it, because everyone's told me they played much better in the second half and Huddersfield and Hull weren't. So maybe I'm just being overcritical then. But well, Molly, you can tell me because you're a Wakefield supporter. Was it a good Wakefield performance?
No, I was there, and it was painful, to be honest with you. It felt from both sides. It felt like they were both just so desperate for the win. They were just making so many mistakes, and I mean, I feel like it is like a sort of a Wakefield fan stereotype, if you will, that we always blame the poor reffing, and there was a lot of that on Thursday, but it wasn't poor reffing. It was just the mistakes being made. I think Wakefield are really missing the creative playmakers, because when we were attacking, it was just all really short play of the ball. There was no flair and no trying to do anything new. It was all just the same over and over again, hoping for a different result.
Which is the definition of madness, of course.
Yeah, Well, that's what it's like being a Wakefield fan.
Yeah, Wakefield's 6th in the table, but Hull. The good news for them is they are above Hull KR still. So,
a question.
Got so many injuries as well. Go on, sorry, Phil.
I was going to say a question for Molly would be, what do you do with Mason Lee now? Because Jacksonfield has won the last 2 Player of the Match awards. Jake Truman appears to be, again, regaining some form. So how does that conundrum get solved?
Honestly, Mason Lee knows a bit of a soft spot in my household, because I love him. My boyfriend cannot stand him. So he is actually a banned topic of discussion, because we'll just end up fighting. I think the thing that Mason brings that is missing at the moment is creativity. He is always, well, not always, sometimes he has really bad games, but when he is on good form, he opens up the play so much more, and he goes for choices, and he makes moves that we just are missing, and those can be the crucial moves that get us that extra 6 points, that get us an extra try, that get us the win. I don't know. I mean, Sinfield, I think he's going to be a fantastic little player. I think everything that I've seen, I've really enjoyed of him. I think last game, actually, he was my player of the match for me. And I don't know. I don't know what you do with Mason. And I think something's going on, because we're missing him.
Well, maybe you'll be back on Friday for the the big Challenge Cup type.
I think is Johnston going to be back?
I don't know, but I'm still blaming Sean Wayne for that. So, and rightfully so. And rightfully so. I don't think I get banned for the RFL for saying that. That was the in-depth analysis of Wakefield versus Hull, which was a load of days ago now, and you probably watched it anyway. Lee 16, Catalans 22. 2 games on at the same time on Friday. Which one did you watch, Phil, on Friday? Which or did you flip between the two?
I was at York. I was.
Oh, well, there you go. You watched York and Warrington.
Yeah. So I've only seen the
try
of Lee and Catalan, so I'd defer to my colleagues for the definitive answer on that.
James, did you watch it? No.
I half watched the game. It was on in the background, but Lee, what are they now? 1 from 4, which I think is a surprise. I think if you were, on this, it's not that's going to translate well to the podcast, but this,
No.
what is it? It's one of
It's
those.
like one of those things you get in fish and chip shops, but you're supposed to look at it from the charity shop, and it says, "When you love what you have everything you need," which is nonsense, isn't it? You don't want any of that rubbish. You want to use it for league tables.
Good job, we got all the letters at work. Yeah, I think. Yeah, Lee Catalan. I mean, it was a good performance by Catalan, to be fair. They'd obviously significantly improved from the week before. There was quite a lot of talk about their travel and what happened, their emergency landing and this, that, and the other, which just shows, you don't have to have the perfect preparation to perform. I'm not quite sure what the story is really at Lee. It's not firing, is it? And there's 1 or 2 whispers about things going on behind the scenes and things like that. Doesn't seem quite the happiest of camps. And I thought that Catalan deservedly won. Before the game, there was a prediction between John Wilkin and what's she called?
Jodie
Cunningham. Yeah, and Jodie backed Catalan, which you would never have done. I saw Paul Cook's tweet this week. Out of the 7 results, he got 6 out of 7, and that was the game that cost him. So it was without doubt the surprise of the round. As to the reason why, over to you.
There is going to be a constant theme when we review all these games is the number of injuries. And I do think Lee are one of those clubs that are suffering at the moment, and it's a lot of their spine that's out. So whether there is a touch of disharmony, and again, they're another club that have got a lot of players coming off contracts at the end of the year, and sometimes that's difficult to handle because you know that some are leaving, you know that some are not wanted. There are others that are hanging out for probably a better deal than they've been offered, and that I'm not saying that ever fractures a dressing room, but it's not easy to manage. And Lee seem to be in that kind of space at the moment for me. I can't work Catalan out because we talked about identity at the beginning. We were talking about really the identity of the championship, but I watch the 2 French teams at the moment, and I see one that's got an identity, and that's Toulouse. That clearly they want to win games, especially in Toulouse, but they seem to know who they are, and they've got a real concentration of young French talent. They've taken on César Rouget, who you would think Catalan would have thought might have been a player that they brought through that they can invest some more time in. They couldn't decide really where they wanted to play him, and while they're worrying about that, Toulouse have snapped him up. Catalan, I'm not sure, do have an identity. It seems to be, let's get a collection of players together that can win more games than we did last year, which is fine when you're winning, but it's not a where you're going to be.
Is it not the 3rd club in the Wigan borough? You've already got Wigan, you've got Lee, and then you've got what seems like a strong connection to Wigan in the south of France. Yeah, I don't know. I think just touching back on Wakefield game, because I did watch bits of that, the Wakefield's discipline they need to sort out. If obviously they got the result in that game against Hull, but they can't give away that many 6 agains and penalties and they expect to win a game. It was too scrappy, that game on both sides, but it's still a theme in the game. I think overall the rucks are generally much quicker. I think everybody would see that without looking at the stats, and that's supported in just by watching the games. But I think over the next few weeks you'd like to see probably slightly less whistle, and hopefully the players buying in a little bit more, which certainly happened in the Toulouse game, I thought. But talk to us about York and Warrington. That looked like a cracker.
The most bizarre game because Warrington actually won it 3 times. And their start was fantastic. They were, 16 points up inside 15 minutes. Kai Taylor-Ray is an absolute menace. He could be anything. I really hope that he doesn't get overplayed, but whilst ever he's out there, you can't take your eyes off him. And York had the issue of they were so busy concentrating on where he might come into the line. Warrington were exploiting that in other areas. So Sam Stone's 2 tries were, I think, where York were thinking Taylor Ray was going to come into the line. And they look so composed and solid. And then the next thing, you're looking up at the scoreboard and York are winning. And they play a lovely brand of football. I think Mark Applegarth, again, we praised him in everything that he's built at York, but they've got a real belief in the way that they play, and they play to their strengths, and they know that they don't have the same access to players that some of the other clubs do. That they've only had about 4 months to put a team together, so they're making the best of what they've got in their fullback. Toa Mata Afa, they've got one of the players of the first 4 weeks of the season. He has been absolutely fantastic. And they've worked out that the best thing to do with Paul McShane, because they need him on the field, is to start him at hooker and then move him to loose forward. And there was a touch of the old Jeff Gracians about him. He wasn't making many yards going forward, but he was spraying the ball about here, there, and everywhere to willing runs. And all of a sudden, York are ahead. And then the second half starts, and Warrington do what they did in the first half. And we're 3 scores ahead. It's our game. We're in complete control. Then you make a couple of notes on your pad, and you look up, and York are winning again, or within a score, and you just go like, this is great. But if I'm Warrington, I'm thinking clearly we've had a great start to the season. We're undefeated in 3 games, but that's a shot across the bows that you have to be more disciplined and rigid defensively if you're going to get to the games that are going to mean something towards the end of the season. And York very nearly pulled it off again until Warrington saw the game out and won by 8 points. There was a bit of a feel of touch and pass about it. The defences on the line were vulnerable. But great entertainment, and a hats off to the 1,500 travelling Warrington fans who were behind the posts and made a really good atmosphere.
You always want to whisper, but they're looking good at the minute, Warrington. I know they've got a long way to go, but they're looking all right at the minute. 3rd in the table as we speak, not that it matters. And they're at home, albeit away, on Saturday in Challenge Cup to Gull, so a chance for Sam Burgess to rest a few players in that one. Saturday, St Helens 26, Bradford 22. We'll get on to Toulouse and Wigan in a moment, but the Bulls are back, Molly. What do you make of that game and their start to the season so far?
I do have to say, as much as I'm not a Bulls fan, I think the fact that the newly promoted teams are coming in so strong and pressing so hard is great luck. I think I was not a fan of the 14 team Super League when it first started, but I am eating my words. I think they've come in and they've come in strong. I think really they should have won that game. There was some controversial, shall we say, moments in that game. Just a lot of chaos, really, which I sort of feel like is the Bulls in one word, Bull mania. Bit of chaos.
So we had a red card and a yellow card. That was I thought the red card was right, and the yellow card seemed to be right as well. So yes.
I didn't watch the whole game because I had a social life on Saturday night for once. So I watched
come on, can't come on this program have social life.
I know. So I only watched the highlights, but one of my friends is a Bradford fan and she was not happy, and I spoke to her this morning.
Shock horror, team losers, not happy. The rest all. I've not watched this game, by the way, but I did see some of the comments. I can't comment on this. I was watching the Toulouse game, but Phil, did you watch this game?
Yeah, I did. I thought Bradford were really unlucky. Not unlucky with the sending off. I think the fact that they were still in the game with 12 men is the absolute credit to what Kurt Haggerty is trying to do there. I like the way they're using the ball, and it was really interesting being at Odsal the week before when they played Toulouse that a narrower pitch affected both teams because Bradford want to move the ball. They had a couple of injuries. Wonga Blake, who's been again one of the stars of the opening weeks of the season, and I would imagine he wanted to put on a show at St Helens. Had to come off early, and that obviously lessened their threat. I still think there's a debate to be had about Jacob Host's broken leg.
Why did he hobble off and not take him off on a stretcher? I don't understand that.
I don't know if the stretcher didn't come on quickly enough, but that's rugby league, isn't it? It's only a broken leg. Get up.
Run it off. Yeah.
But again, we've seen a ban on the back of that, and it has been classed as a hip drop tackle. I think again there's a David Clemmer tackle where there's a case for saying that Poshy was sent off rightly, then did that deserve a little bit more? I think Bradford could feel slightly aggrieved. But the great thing that they had was that they took it to the last play of the game, and there was real fear amongst some of the St Helens fans that Bradford were going to come on strong late at the end and pinch it, and it wouldn't have been unjust if they had. I think they have been a credit, but speaking to somebody behind the scenes at Bradford who may have a column in a magazine that is out at the end of this week, they're desperate for players. And this is the whole thing with injuries, that they've started off with relatively small squads because they didn't know they were going to be in Super League until late. There's very few people that they can go out and buy when they're allowed into Super League. There's even fewer when they get injuries, and they've got a relatively small squad and not the level of junior development that the more established teams in Super League have. And they're desperately trying to find recruits. And I think Molly's right in saying a lot of us that said it would be uncompetitive from the start can't level that. I just think what's going to catch up with all of the promoted teams and some of the other teams that are already down at the bottom of the league is we have got a raft of injuries at the moment, and they are epidemic for where we are in the season, and a lot of them are long term, and it's gonna cause a problem with week in, week out elite level rugby league. And whilst I have nothing but admiration for what Bradford, Toulouse, and York are doing, they're going to run out of bodies, is the way it looks to me at the moment.
So Bradford unlucky, we shall say, in that defeat against St Helens, but for Saints, points on the board. So Paul Rowley will be happy. Toulouse 16, Wigan 36. And of course, the first thing we say in this one, no surprise with the result. Penalty try, James. That's exciting, isn't it? Always exciting to see a penalty try.
Yeah, I think it was the right outcome as well. It's always down to the opinion of the referee or the video referee, but it was a clear pullback. And the question is, was he going to score or otherwise? It's either a sin bin and a penalty, or a penalty try in rugby league anyway. Certainly in this country, we don't award both. So I thought it was the right outcome for a penalty try. Just on Phil's point and picking up on what Molly said earlier around the number of teams, I still maintain there are too many teams in Super League. The competition cannot sustain 14 quality teams and produce quality games week in, week out. And Phil's right. I think, as the season goes along, the promoted clubs will struggle. However, that's not to take anything away from them. Each of them have got 2 victories, and I thought Toulouse again played their part in this game. And on paper it could have been a bigger margin, but what I thought was it's the first time I think I've seen Wigan play this year. They're playing a slightly different way, I think, and whether it was just this game, but there was a lot more offloads in their game than I think there has been. I think there's maybe a slight change in the way that they're attacking. And listening to Paul Deacon talk on the Bench podcast, talking about his role is looking at the ends of sets and starts of sets, fullbacks and wingers, I guess, catching and running it in, and then, finishing off with the kicking game, or however they're going to finish on the last, tackle and pinning them in the corner. But what Toulouse struggled with, particularly very early on in the game, I think the first 3 sets of the game, they couldn't get out of their own 20. They really struggled for field position. And Wigan were just fairly dominant in the first half, 18-0 up. And for the sake of the game, Toulouse scored before half time, 18-6. So knew at that point the game wasn't over. They got the first try in the second half, Wigan, and then the penalty try came. So they never really went away, Toulouse. And I think fair play, they stuck at Wigan, and as I say, they certainly played their part in it. But is it Farrimond, the Wigan player? Lightning speed and contributed to, I don't know if he scored actually late on, but he certainly contributed to 2 eye-catching tries for Wigan. He's a player to look at this year for sure. I thought Wigan, I liked the way that they played. I thought it was a little bit less structured, a little bit more off the cuff. It won't be, that's probably a phrase they don't like, but that's the way it sort of came across a little bit more. I thought it was an entertaining game, really.
I think the other thing about Wigan at the moment is the form of Brad O'Neill, and you touched on the new rules, and they're still maybe settling down a little bit, but some clubs are exploiting it really, really well. And Brad O'Neill, apart from now having hair, looks to have had a new lease of life, with the fact that he's got more speed and space and time around the dummy half to create absolute havoc. And I think a lot of what we're going to do in it, they clearly are physically intense in the way that they defend. But I think then when you're just trying to catch your breath from that, he's making hay while their sun is shining.
That's the analysis people are tuning in for. Because we're running out of time, did anyone watch Huddersfield versus Hull KR apart from when it overlapped between Leeds and Castleford and there was nothing else to do?
No, I think
No, I don't think anyone would have done that.
14 injuries is unbelievable at Huddersfield. But this is
We're talking about an injury crisis. Huddersfield are sort of the beacon of injury crises in this
But
sport.
the worry there is that's exactly what happened to them last year. So is it something in the preparation, the conditioning? I have no idea. But there's clearly an issue at Huddersfield with getting their top players on the field. And I just wonder where they go from here, because they had a good crowd for their first game. They've had less than 5,000 for the second game. And I would imagine I didn't see anything other than the highlights. There were a lot of Hull KR fans there. But if they're going to be fed football that isn't going to be winning because they can't get their personnel out there, what does this season hold for Huddersfield? It's a concern already.
And it's an all pay gate on Saturday when they play Hull KR again in the Challenge Cup at the Aku Stadium. Is that what it's called? The Alfred McAlpine. Leeds Cass. That was a funny game. Enjoyed the jumping from Cass. That's what I'm going to be doing in my wheelchair, trying to catch the ball. I'm already scared. We had a kickoff in practice the other week in training, and I was like, what am I going to do when a ball comes at me? I can't. This is not good. I injured my finger. But that was Leeds second in the table for the second.
You could always do what Ravalawa does and just not catch it.
Well, I could do that. I'll blame somebody else.
I mean, Molly talked earlier about what keeps neutral and new fans coming to games, and it's having the event, but it's what then engages them after the event. Well, I think it's personalities, and in Mike Acevo and Michele Ravalawa, everybody will highlight that Ravalawa didn't jump for a ball, but he was Castleford's biggest threat every time he ran with the ball, particularly when he was given some space. The try that he scored, I think it wasn't a great game, but it was worth the admission fee just to see the two Fijians up against each other. I think Leeds needed that 2 points so that Vegas wasn't wasted. And they did look a little bit tired. Brad Arthur did say there was some fatigue in the team, but they weren't going to use that as an excuse. So I think it was just important that they did whatever they needed to do to get that result. And the defence was rock solid. I think Castleford, again, are a team that the spine is a little bit new again this year. And the guy that they were going to have at fullback isn't going to play for most of the season. The young player they were going to bring in at fullback that was going to replace him isn't going to play for, and that's disruptive. But I don't think they posed enough questions. I think that that Leeds were there to be threatened, and they didn't do that enough. But I think from a Leeds point of view, that those are two very precious points. There were a lot of people around the press box were saying it needs to be ugly, but they just need to win, and that's exactly what it was.
I think it was Stuart Pike on the telly said they're looking to bring in another fullback at Casper. Then John Wells said, so are a lot of other teams. I don't know who's out there. Probably no one. Challenge Cup this week. Wakefield Leeds, Wigan Bradford on Friday. On Saturday, York Keighley, Gull Warrington, Huddersfield Hull KR, Lee Hull FC in the battle of the teams with no players, Castleford St Helens, Catalans Oldham, and on Sunday, London versus Barrow, Swinton Sheffield, and Workington Newcastle in the 1895 Cup. It gets underway this weekend, so I assume Barrow made the money they needed to get down for that big game in the big trophy, which I'm assuming none of those games will be streamed. Well, maybe London will stream their own game because they do, but the 1895 Cup there. Anything else before we run out of time? James is shaking his head. He's done.
I think the important thing is that the Challenge Cup gets invested in this week. It has lost a little bit of its luster, and that might not be the fault of the competition. It's just where it fits in the season. I think there are a couple of games that everybody should look forward to. I think Wakefield Leeds to me is the key game, and it's not just because I'm outvoted with Wakefield fans on this particular podcast, but that's fascinating. I think Wakefield haven't yet hit their straps, but if one thing is going to get certainly the fans and their players motivated, it's 1968. So Yeah, it's a fantastic traditional rivalry. I think also Cass Saints is a really interesting game, because I think Castleford would acknowledge that they're probably not going to win Super League this year, but there's a route to winning the Challenge Cup now that is fewer games than it ever has been. And if I'm a club like Cass, I target that game and say the further we can go in this competition, the more we can take our fans with us, and they can buy into the idea that this is a new Castleford. But it's Saints. It's interesting that talking of injuries, they're going to be a fair few missing. Mark Percival might be back, but I think for the neutral, that's a real fascinating game as well.
Oh, what a damp old squib of a news story that was. He's leaving. He's leaving. No, he's not. He's actually staying. No, that was good, wasn't it? Molly, thank you for joining us. Do you want to promote anything so people can find you on the socials, as I believe you young people call them?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Molly Fairhurst, and then I'm Molly on the story on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, because us young people have those things.
TikTok. I've got a TikTok. James, do you know what game you're doing this week, or have you got the excitement of waiting to find out?
I've got Wigan Bradford, so I can check out the latest controversy involving Bradford this week.
Get your stop clock ready. Get your stop clock ready. Phil, thank you very much. The magazine's out this week.
It is. It's at the printers as we speak. So hopefully no major story other than Zach Lomax going to Rugby Union. We'll break it in the next few hours, and it should be with subscribers Thursday and in the shops on Friday.
Excellent. We'll be back hopefully in the usual place at the usual time on Monday, because I'm allowed out of the house on Wednesday. Enjoy the week of Rugby League, especially if it all goes right on Friday and Jack Sinfield scores a hat-trick.